very much, sir. Look at that. That is a nice looking thing right there. Just so you know, one of my favorite sayings is the Holy Spirit plus caffeine equals awesome. So there you go. All right, I'm just going to have a swig of this right here before we get started. I'm excited for this morning. My name is Mike Stortz. I'm the family pastor here. If you're visiting today, I'm not Pastor David. I'm the family pastor. I do preschool through high school. That's what we define as family ministry here at South Point. Preschool, elementary, middle school, and high school, so I need lots of caffeine, as you can expect. But we have lots of awesome volunteers. We have 3 different worship environments going right now in family ministry. I was thinking about that as we were in here worshiping. There was a group of middle school girls who were leading worship in preschool. There were a group of high school girls leading worship in our elementary ministry. And then we had some adults doing worship in our middle school ministry on Sunday morning, which is really awesome to think about that we actually had 4 different types of worship environments going on here this morning. And today, what I want to talk about for a little bit is just this whole idea of family. Now, I know if you automatically might think, well, you know, I don't have a preschooler through a high schooler at home right now, so I don't know how this is going to apply to me, so I'm going to sit back, relax for a little bit, and we'll get out of here and go get some lunch. But I'm hoping that through this day and through talking just for a little bit, that we'll all begin to realize that all of us belong to some kind of family, right? Actually, earlier this week, I really had a privilege. Somebody asked me, hey, can you tell me a little bit about family ministry? So I sat down with them for about an hour and a half, and we just talked. They're looking to launch a church, and for some reason they wanted my opinion. I have no idea why. But we sat down and talked for a little while, and that's basically what I want us to do right now, is just talk a little bit about family. Is that okay? Everybody's good with that? All right, sweet. If you got a Bible, it's on the back of your bulletin there. We're going to start in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, and this is sort of this is our key verses for family ministry here at South Point. And if you don't know much about this book, Deuteronomy was one of the books that Moses wrote, and in this book, he's laying out all the law because they're about to enter the promised land. They've wandered in the desert for 40 years, and they're about to enter the promised land for the first time. Now, Moses knows that his legacy is on this side of the promised land, right? He had a little bit of an anger issue. So God said, hey, you can see it, but you can't go into it. Your successor is going to take them in. So he's laying out, hey, this is what you need to do. So in Deuteronomy chapter 6, I'm going to start in verse 4. This is what it reads. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength." Now you might remember a few thousand years later, this guy named Jesus shows up, and the Pharisees ask Jesus, hey, what is the greatest commandment, right? And remember what he says? He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your strength. That was called the Shema. Like, there was no commandment greater than that commandment. That was it for the nation of Israel. And then this is what Moses says after that. He says, these commandments that I give you today are to be upon your heart. Now, if you're like me, I didn't grow up in church, but I knew that there were like these 10 commandments that a lot of people thought were really important. And, you know, when I hear that word commandment, I think, oh yeah, the 10 commandments, right? And sometimes we have them hanging on the walls in our home or in our church. But Moses was referring to about 600 commandments, right? We like 10. You know? And sometimes we treat those 10 like a checklist, like, yes, I love God today, right? I didn't steal anything today. I drove through the villages and I didn't murder anyone today, okay? Right? But Moses is referring to 600 plus commandments when he says, listen, they're to be on your hearts. And so many times, I remember as a kid, it was like sometimes it would be like, oh man, you're supposed to honor your father and mother. All right, check it off. Because it became a checklist really easily to do, rather than it be on our heart. And in fact, Jesus comes along, and I love what Jesus does, because Jesus says, listen, you are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul. And all the Pharisees are standing there, all right, this guy's cool. Okay, he's on the right track. And then he says, but the second is this. And they're all like, oh no, he's going to do it again. Right? And he says, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And then he makes a huge, profound statement, which sort of sealed the deal for the Pharisees that they were going to try and kill this guy. Because he says, this is the fulfillment of the law. What? And it upsets them so much that they want to put him on a cross. In fact, Jesus goes on to say, I'm the fulfillment of the law. That's pretty crazy. But Moses here in this passage, he says, these commandments are to be on your heart. And then he says this, he says, impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. And literally what Moses is telling them is like, look, when you go into the promised land, it's so pivotal that you pass on to the next generation what God has done. Right? And he says it's so important that when you sit down and when you walk and when you lie down, you get up and you sit around a table and a meal together, that you remember what God has done. Now, listen, there's no mention here of a tabernacle or a temple. This is everyday, ordinary life that he's talking about. And in fact, I want to demonstrate this like this. See, here at South Point, we believe the family is red. You're the heart of the home, right? You're the color red. Now, whatever your family looks like, this is what we know, is that you have about 3,000 hours of influence every year in different ways. Now, the church is the light of the world, right? And it's not this building, okay? It's us. But for this reference, I'm talking about this place. As a church, I'll put it like this. If your child comes here on a Sunday, all right? Okay, let's take a high schooler, okay? We had open house for middle school and high school on Wednesday night, so I was talking to the parents, and I said, put it like this. If your high schooler comes for a few hours on Wednesday night, and then maybe they serve here on a Sunday morning in some capacity, some are serving back there in the media team right now, they're serving all over the building in different ways, they're going to have about 150 hours here of influence. You put an IV in my children, all right? They're pastors' kids, all right? You put an IV in my kids of antibiotics so they don't get sick all year and we don't go on vacation, which we will, okay? All right? They'll have about 150 hours here. Now, 150, 3,000. Now, see, what we want to do, because a long time what's happened in church is sometimes church has gone, well, we're just important as family, so you better be here. Some of you have heard that before. I heard that. And sometimes I remember, man, early on, when I was, doing all my degrees and different things, there were guys that were professors and thought that they knew what they were talking about. There's like, listen, you got to watch out for parents, man. They're trouble. That's a bad mindset. What we want to do is we want to say, hey, the small amount of influence that we have in the life of a child, we want to help you as a family. We just want to partner with you. That's all we want to do, because you are the primary influence. Family, not us. So we think red and orange make a good color. I mean, red and yellow, they make orange. Sorry, gave it away. But we think they make a more vibrant color. Yes, I did get out of kindergarten, I promise. But red and yellow make orange, and we believe this is a better color to have, because this is when you combine the influence of family and church, you get this. And this is where the magic happens. For some reason, when you decide to do that, it's where the magic happens. I'll put it to you like this. My wife's a teacher. And some of you in the room have been educators, and you'll have one of those parent conferences when a parent will come in and say, hey, my child is failing at this, and they're failing this, and I don't understand this, and I don't understand this. And, I love those kinds of things, because then, maybe a guidance counselor or a teacher will say, well, did you do this? Like, did they do their homework? Did you check their folder? And those conversations always go very interesting, right? Because an education system understands that, listen, they could come to school Every day. I had a friend in high school. He graduated. He actually failed twice, but he had perfect attendance. He did. He graduated the same year as me. He failed 2 years, so he was 2 years older than me. They actually gave him a big award, but he failed twice. I don't get it. And no, I'm not talking about myself. But we realized what we realized is the family is more important in education than the teacher, right? The teacher's going to be there, but if it's not backed up at home, it's not going to work. Okay? The same thing is the same thing with church. Okay? Listen, if you don't talk about it when you're walking along the road and when you're lying down and you're getting up and you hang it on your doorsteps and all that stuff, when it doesn't become part of everyday life, it's like fine china. When you get it out, the kids are like, what are we doing? Who's coming over? So let's move on, because here's the thing we all need to realize is some days we just need to be reminded that our families are part of a bigger story, and that God desires to demonstrate His redemptive power through us. Now, I know that can be a really tough statement, because I think a lot of times when we think about family and church, we think about a family like this one. This is one of my favorite pictures of my family, because I look decent in this picture, right? And I think a lot of times in church, when we think about families, we think about this kind of family, a mom and a dad, and 2 biological children, right? The Bradys, okay? You come to my house, it's not the Bradys, it's the bunch, okay? But here's the thing, in the United States, I don't know if you all can see that in the back, I tried to bring a big one. In the United States, this is only 25% of families. Now, some of you might think that's a bummer, and that we need to get back to families that look like this. I don't think so. I'll be really honest, because I think what God wants to do is that right there, that every single family, God desires to show His redemptive power through us. Because some of your families is a single mom, it's a single dad, it's an aunt or an uncle. Maybe it's a grandma or a granddad that are raising your grandchildren. You never thought you'd be there. I mean, every week I read connection cards with the other pastors, and there's lots of people that pray over those. But every single week I read cards about, man, I'm praying for my child and my grandchildren to get saved. I want reconciliation in my family. So I know for a lot of you, this is a present reality that you desire, and you're on your knees every day praying for this. And all I want to do for a couple minutes is talk about 5 things that you can do as a family. Okay, is that cool? We got that? First one is this. Because here's what happens. When we think about this, when you see how much time you have left, you tend to do more with the time you have. When you see how much time you have left, you tend to do more with the time you have. I have an app on my phone. It's called the Legacy app, and it helps me count down to my children's graduation from high school. All right? My son, I don't know what's so funny about that. My son Solomon has 150 weeks until high school graduation. He just finished middle school. Okay? Yes, I'm old. All right? My beard tells me every day. All right? My daughter Hope has 411 hours. Or not 11 hours. No, God, good gracious. 411 weeks till high school graduation. And see, a lot of you in the room remind me every week to take advantage of the time I have with my kids, because it's precious, right? Because you realize you've been there already. You have grandkids and great-grandkids that have already graduated high school. When you see how much time you have left, you tend to do more with the time you have now. Take that a different way. Maybe you visited the doctor and he gave you some bad news. You see how much time you have left, you tend to do more with the time you have now. You get that bad report, and all of a sudden that all comes in of like, man, I need to make sure that I get relationships right. So first one is this, is imagine the end. Focus your energy and effort that issues that will make a lasting impact. 100 years from now, the only thing that's going to matter is a person's relationship with God. That's it. And if you're a grandparent in the room or you're a parent in the room, man, present reality is you better focus in on that. Because that's part of the legacy that you're going to leave to your children. I love it, man. I didn't get to baptize this morning. I was bummed. Maybe it's because I never got to dunk a basketball, so I get to dunk people, all right? Man, I love baptism because you see the story in people's life. Man, Pat and Daryl this morning, that is so awesome. They have family down here. Congratulations to you guys. Thank you for demonstrating to a lot of people out here what it means to follow Jesus. Thank you very much. Right? That's part of their legacy now that they get to leave to their children and to their grandchildren, is you imagine the end. Second one is this, is you create a rhythm. Tap into the power of quality moments together and build a sense of purpose through everyday experiences. Listen, I don't care if your family's just you, or it's 2 people, or it's 22 people, right? You need to create a rhythm. Now, your rhythm will not look like my rhythm. Thank goodness for you. Okay? I mean, me and my wife, we both work full time. We have kids that are involved in a lot of things. My son, he's going into high school, and we just discovered high school band. Lord help us, right? I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the opportunity, but it's a lot. And here's what it looks like for us. For us, creating a rhythm means taking advantage of the time that we have together in the morning, right? And at night, I'll be really honest with you, we're all home together about 4 nights a week that we can sit down and all eat a meal together, okay? So here's what we do. This is our house. This might not be your house, okay? But this is our house. We turn off the TV, right? We sit down, we have a meal. I'll be honest, usually one person at the table has a device, because what we try to do here at South Point, if we want to equip parents and we want to equip grandparents, so we give you some questions you can talk about as a family. Now, I'll tell you this. The first time you sit down and do this, your children will freak out. In fact, if it's just you and your spouse, let me be real honest. If for those of you who are a little bit older and maybe it's just you and your spouse, you do this week, they'll be like, what happened to you? But instead of just sitting there with the TV on, watching the news and eating a meal, turn it off and have some quality time together. Right? Hey, okay. It doesn't matter if it's just the 2 of you and you're in your 70s, or it's just you have a whole family. When you're all together, take advantage of that time, right? Create a rhythm, because your family has one. You have one. You just need to take advantage of it. The next one is this. Oh, actually, no, I got some pictures. Go ahead, put that first one up there. Man, this is a horrible picture. I don't know why I picked this one. What am I doing? I had too much Diet Mountain Dew that day. One of those things for creating a rhythm for me is I really have a great opportunity that I'm able to eat lunch every week with my kids. So I try to go once a week and I eat lunch with my daughter Hope and with my son Solomon. And my daughter Hope really likes me to post on social media about lunch. So this is a picture from her at field day. And listen, if you have a grandchild in the room or you have a child in the room, man, if your grandkids come to town, don't make it all fun and games, okay? Now you can make it fun, but take advantage of that time that's fun. Right? If you have children, maybe you can't go eat lunch with them. Maybe you take advantage and you do something else. And this was from field day. And then this next one, oh man, this next picture. I grew a beard really fast. Okay. This is the last lunch with my son Solomon while he was in middle school. This was just a week or 2 ago. And he doesn't like me to post on social media about him, so I didn't post this picture, but I asked him today if I could use it today. And, this is something I started with him in kindergarten, and I continued it with Hope. There's some weeks when I miss, but it's a time that I can spend with him that I won't have later on. I got 150 weeks left. I got 150 of those. That's it. Now I'm still going to be his dad. That's not going to change, but it'll be different. Let's keep moving. The next one is fight for the heart. This is what I see on connection cards every week. Create a culture of unconditional love that fuels the emotional and moral health of your children. Listen, I'll be really honest with you. If you're trying to reconcile a relationship with a child or a grandchild, fight for the heart. It's more important to lose the argument sometimes and keep the heart. sometimes it's easy to forget that you can win the argument and force the right behavior, but lose the heart in the process. And I'm just telling you this, and this is something that I live out on a daily basis with my children, is sometimes I have to pause and wait before that argument starts. Because we can win the argument and lose the heart. And that goes with the spouse as well. That can be with anybody. That can be with a friendship. It doesn't matter. In fact, Pastor David talked about that during the Sandbox series. Fight for the heart of every relationship. I mean, think about it. And I know you're sitting there, and I know what you're saying, because I say it sometimes too. That person wronged me. That golf cart cut me off, man. Oh, villages. All right. Some of you thought I was talking about plantation. All right. But listen, seriously. What would God do? I mean, we know what he did, right? We messed up the relationship, and what did he do? He sent his son. And Jesus willingly, before the foundation of the world, he said, I'll do it. For us. That's the example. Because here's the thing, in our children and our grandchildren, guess who is the first example of who God is? Us. So do you want the example of an argument winner or a heart fighter? And listen, I'm not saying I let every argument go, okay? But you better fight for the heart no matter what. Let's go to the next one. Widen the circle. Invite others to invest in your children so they have other voices to help them determine the direction of their lives. Now, like I said, some of you remind me of that, and I'm so thankful for it. But I know there's some preschool parents in here and some elementary parents and maybe even some middle school and high school parents that are like, they're mine. Right? Because, I mean, they're my kids. This is it for me. But we got to widen the circle. I have a friend, and he wrote about this in a book, and he said that him and his high school son had this great relationship. They were like best friends. And then one day his son was 16, and he had gone out, and he had a curfew time, and he came home past curfew. It was about 15 minutes past curfew. He came home, and as he walks in the door, and Dad said, "Hey, where have you been?" And the son said, "I don't want to tell you." "Who were you with?" "I don't want to tell you that either." "What were you doing?" See the first two responses, right? And all of a sudden, he has this dilemma of like, this has never happened with my son before. We were always best friends. And he didn't sleep that night. It was this whole dilemma. He just said, go to your room. He didn't know what really to do, what punishment to take. And the next day, he walks into his boss's office, and his boss and him, they were really good friends, and his boss was a wise guy. And he sat down in his boss's office, and he just sort of poured out his heart. "Man, this happened, and he said this, and I can't believe it. My son's lost it. I don't know what, aliens abducted him. I don't know what's going on." And his boss just sort of sat and listened to him, right? And then wise statement was the next statement with a question at the same time that he said, "Well, did you tell your dad everything when you were a teenager?" I can tell by the laughter that none of us really did. And see, that's tough to hear as a parent. That's scary. But, see, some of you are grandparents in the room. You're part of that wider circle. And listen, maybe your kids don't want you to be part of that circle. Fight for the heart. I know that can be hard. I'm not there yet, but I've listened to others. Man, you don't know what your children are doing with your grandchildren. Fight for the heart to be a part of that circle. But for you who are parents, you got to widen the circle. Because there's coming a day when they might not want to talk to you. I'm not there yet, but this is what I did. A few years ago, Solomon turned 13. And I went to him and I said, "Listen, this is sort of like a big birthday, and here's what I want to do. I want you to pick 5 other guys who you think are going to be influential in your life over the next few years. Because I know there might be a day when he's 15 or 16, it better not be when he's 14, because that's right now, that he might not want to talk to me. But I wanted to say, hey, here's some other guys that I trust, that you can talk to. So these are the guys he picked. Some of them are members of my small group. As you can see, there's some guys here. I think Pastor Tim was there too, but I think he was taking the picture actually, and we were praying and he was taking a picture. That was a joke, Pastor Tim. I'm so sorry. But here's some guys that he picked, and all we did is that he spent a day with them, and they did some stuff. I think he went fishing with Matt Vaca. He went geocaching with Pastor Tim. He did some other stuff with Pastor George and Pastor David and Dave Edwards. And then we had like a man feast. I mean, come on, man. Man feast, right? Way too much protein. And then we had a time of prayer together. And the whole point was that I listened to you that said, man, time is precious. Because here's the thing, if you don't put other voices in the life of your children, they'll find one. They will. So be proactive about it. It went so well for us. We're planning on doing something similar with Hope. And another picture, I think I skipped one. I'm sorry, guys. Another picture is I'm really fortunate. My in-laws live about 6 doors up from me, and pray for them, not for me. Pray for them. And then my parents live about 15 minutes away, so we get together a lot as a whole family. I know that's not everybody's situation, but man, when we're together, we take advantage of that time and we spend time together as a family. That's all of them playing a game over there in the corner. My dad and I were watching the golf match. But take advantage of that time, because sometimes holiday meals can be dreaded meals. But if you go in with an attitude of fighting for the heart of the relationship, it might change what those meals are like. The last one is make it personal. Let your kids, let your grandkids see you grow so they can understand how to confront their own limitations. I love this quote from John Acuff. John Acuff is a writer that I like to follow. He says, by showing my kids my Bible study and telling them about it, I've made it personal. I've deliberately invited them into part of my life, which opens up amazing amount of conversation. So many times as parents and even as grandparents, we don't want our children to see us struggle. But part of growth spiritually for us and for them is to make it personal, to let people in, right? In fact, I got a funny thing. My wife and I went to a marriage retreat earlier this year for our anniversary. I really recommend it. I don't care what age you are. There was a couple in there when we went that had been married like 6 days. And then there was a couple that had been married 60 years at the same marriage retreat. And it's by Family Life. It's called A Weekend to Remember. They do it twice a year. I'm not getting any kind of plug for that, I promise. I just think it was that great. And they do a session on fighting, okay? Because you're going to fight, right? And we are going through the session, and at the beginning of it, they asked you to check off some things. Let me find it here. Oh, I missed a page. Where did it go? My books. There we go. This is what it said at the top of the page. It says making it personal. It said we all have areas where we are most susceptible to anger, areas that push our buttons. Check any that you feel apply to you. Last minute changes, feeling neglected, feeling disrespected, stress in the workplace, unrealistic expectations, hurtful words, a stubborn person, unmet desires, when my children disobey, yelling, feeling my rights have been violated. So I sort of went into the session, got this, good, right? Ginger and I, we don't fight very often. And as I sat there and I was trying to be honest with myself, and it said, check any that you feel apply to you. And I know you can't see it from way back there, but I checked every box. Now, that started some discussion between Ginger and I and my guys from my small group. Most of them are in here right now. That started some discussion in small group that I have some issues with anger. Now, I know that might be hard to believe for you, but to be honest, as a guy, I think a lot of times, guys, we just internalize it. And the beauty of it is me working through this the last few months, I've let my kids in on that. Why? Because they're going to have to deal with it too. Listen, fellas, I wrote this down. I didn't say it in the first service. I wish I would have, but I'll say it in this one. We need to, if we make it personal, we need to pass on more than what sports team we root for. I mean, I think too many times as guys, man, we get our kids early on, oh yeah, I root for the Gators, I root for the Seminoles, I root for the Lightning, I root for the Blackhawks, whatever, okay? Listen, we need to pass on more than that. We have to pass on our spiritual heritage. That's not mom's job. That's our job. Now listen, I know for some of you in the room, maybe dad's not there and that is on you. Then pass it on. But pass on relationship with God through Jesus Christ of most importance. And listen, it's not being able to say all the right things or do all the right things. It's able to live out your faith in front of your kids so they can live it out themselves. That's it. Because every single one of us are different. Last is this. Bottom line. God desires to work through every family to demonstrate His story of restoration and redemption. Listen, I hope you don't walk out of here and be like, well, Pastor Mike's got it all together. I just share with you, I don't. All right? I relate a lot to Bruce Banner in the first Avengers movie. I'm angry all the time. I'm being honest. You guys are laughing. I'm being honest. You ride with me in the car up to the Villages next week. You're like, you should not be a pastor, okay? I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you the truth. I went up to the Villages with a student yesterday, and I did not say a word the whole time because I was like, if I say something, it's going to be the wrong thing. It's going to be bad, all right? Listen, God's desire is through every family. There are tons of families represented in this room to demonstrate His story of restoration and redemption. That's what He wants to do, is use every single one of us to demonstrate His story. Let's pray. God, we just thank You for today.